Today we're going to be looking at criminal activity on the dark web.
What exactly is the dark web? Well, it is also referred to as the darknet. Doesn't matter what you call it, darknet, dark web, but don't call it deep web. That's different. We'll get into that next slide. It's the wild west of the internet. Just the deep underground. It's the sewers. That's the best way I can describe it, really. It does have a technical name, hidden services. Web servers that run locally and are not visible to or accessible to the outside internet and can only be accessed from within the network of the software provider. Pretty much translates to ultimate privacy. Also, you need Tor, which is basically just an ultimate incognito mode. Tor is the only browser that can access the dark web. It is free to download for everyone. It's really at your own risk type of thing to access the dark web. Like, it's not illegal to go to the dark web, but it's illegal if you get up to some illegal stuff on there. Okay, that's basically it. Tor was also originally created by the U.S. military to protect government communications, so that's interesting. So yeah, and I see to the right there, that basically is showcasing what Tor encrypts and what it doesn't encrypt. It basically encrypts everything, pretty much everything, but yeah. Okay, now we're getting into what the difference is between the dark web and the deep web. Some people mistake the two. Like, some people call the dark web the deep web. They think it's interchangeable, but it's not. So basically, the entire internet can be divided into 3 separate layers. As you see on the right, I really love the iceberg example. How the iceberg shows it. So you got the surface web on top, and then toward the middle, you got the deep web, which is different from the dark web, and then way down on the bottom of the iceberg is the dark web. And the surface web is basically just regular internet, like stuff you can just type into Google, and yeah, that's basically the surface web. And then the deep web is basically all the private databases, like your personal email accounts, inboxes, bank accounts, like your bank accounts, such as how much money you have in your bank, and that are protected by passwords and security walls. Which the deep web is 90% of the internet, which is kind of crazy. And then the surface web is only 5%, which is also kind of crazy, because when you think of the internet, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and to think that the surface web only represents 5% of it is kind of crazy. And then you got the dark web, just deep underground. It's the wild west of the internet. It's the sewers, and which only represents 5% of the entire internet. So yeah.
Okay, in this section we're going to be talking about illicit marketplaces, and we are going to talk about the Silk Road.
What are black markets? Well, basically they're marketplaces that sell illegal items, such as guns or drugs. These can be traced back to the 1970s with closed networks and in-person meetups. Obviously, they have come a long way since then, since just the evolution of the internet and the introduction of cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin. And cryptocurrency is a decentralized digital currency that allows for instant transactions between people all over the world. It's basically private money. It cuts out the third-party involvement. And on the right here, you have the definition for Bitcoin, which is a cryptocurrency, a virtual currency designed to act as money and a form of payment outside the control of any one person, group, or entity, and thus removing the need for third-party involvement in financial transactions, which makes it perfect for criminals on the dark web.
Okay, now we're going to be talking about some other cryptocurrencies used on the dark web. Of course, we have Bitcoin, which you've touched on. It's the most popular, of course, with a 91% acceptance rate. And then second in line, you have Nero, which is known as a privacy coin. Monero can keep wallet addresses hidden. That's one thing with Bitcoin. That's one of its flaws is Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, your wallet address is like not hidden. So it is possible for your wallet address to get tracked down. It would be quite difficult, but it is possible. Okay, third we have Litecoin, which has the ability to complete transactions quicker. That's about the only thing that it has going for it. It has a 21% acceptance rate. And then under that we have Zcash, which is another privacy coin like Monero, but only has a acceptance rate of 9%. And then we have Dash, which resembles Zcash, but only has a 3% acceptance rate, so it's not as popular.
Okay, on this slide we are going to be looking at the various products one could find on a black market on the dark web. So basically, on these black markets, you could find things such as drugs, guns, stolen information, stolen data, to be more specific, hacking tools, hackers for hire offering their services, pornographic content, stolen goods, exotic animals, human organs, and counterfeit goods. You see on the right here, they have counterfeits, they have data, stolen, obviously, probably, drugs, electronics, forgeries, so think like paintings, maybe, information, jewelry, services, such as the hackers for hire, tobacco, weapons, and other. Okay, on this slide we're going to be talking about the Silk Road, which was one of the biggest and well-known black markets to exist on the dark web. It was started in 2011 by Ross Ulbricht, also known as admin for Dread Pirate Roberts, before he was identified, of course. Silk Road, it started off small, but obviously it grew over time because, it's known as one of the biggest and well-known. It's well-known, so if it was always small, it probably wouldn't be as known. It was mostly known for its sale of drugs, and by 2013, 70% of all the products on the Silk Road were drugs. As you see on the right here of this picture, you see how much drugs there are compared to the rest of the products. So that's a big difference. And 2013 was also the year the Silk Road would get shut down, along with the arrest of Ross Ulbricht himself on October 1st. And so the Silk Road lasted from 2011 to 2013, and it managed to generate about 1.2 billion in sales and 80 million in commissions. And that is just crazy. That is a lot of money.
Okay, here we have some additional information on Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road. He grew up in Austin, Texas. He earned a scholarship to the University of Texas, so obviously he was smart. And then from there, he went to graduate school at Penn State, where he studied material science and engineering. But eventually he lost interest in that, and he gained a new interest in economics. And before the Silk Road, he failed at some jobs, like a failed video game company, and then he eventually got a break, and his neighbor offered him a job at a book business that he ran, and he was very successful there until he had to shut that down eventually. But that was during the time he was like programming the Silk Road. So obviously, after that, the Silk Road was born.
Okay, now we are venturing into something a little more dark, and when I say a little more, I mean a lot more dark. We're gonna be dipping our toes into some pretty disturbing stuff here. Illegal media on the dark web. Okay, so the dark web is home to a lot of disturbing media, including snuff films and child pornography. Two very, very dark topics, but unfortunately we have to get into it. The term snuff was coined by author Ed Sanders in 1970 to describe real murders recorded on film. Both human and animal snuff exist, unfortunately, but animal snuff is more outraged against, and I'm assuming because animals are seen as more defenseless, so that's probably why. An example of animal snuff would be crush porn, which shows women in high heels crushing small animals to death, which is not a good image to have in your head. Okay, now we're getting into red rooms, which are live streams of torture and murder, and people will pay to watch it in order to access the live stream. And sometimes they pay extra to direct what the torturer does, which is pretty messed up. Tor prevents the tracking of live streams locations, so that's what makes red rooms work on the dark web. Actual red rooms are still considered pretty fake today. They're still like, are they real or are they not? Because a lot of them just turned out to be scams. Child pornography is so prevalent on the dark web that it is just a breeding ground for pedophiles. It is just so easy for pedophiles to find each other on the dark web. They have their own little corner, and it's bad. Most black markets were against the sale of anything having to do with child abuse, child pornography, whatever you want to call it. So predators and pedophiles had to create their own space on the dark web, and they did. So yeah, it's really easy for them to talk to each other. It's bad. These sites include like forums, chats, images, and videos with categories such as prepubescent children and too young teens, which is sometimes referred to as jailbait. Some of these sites have some pretty disturbing names, such as Playpen, Toybox, Child's Play, Kinder Surprise, Louisiana City, Giftbox, and the Love Zone. Pretty disturbing stuff. Okay, on this slide we're going to be talking about the Pedo Empire, which is one of the biggest networks of child pornography. The creator of Pedo Empire was Lux, who was later identified as Matthew Graham. His Pedo Empire was just filled with images, videos, and links to sites he used personally and sites he created himself. There was a part of his Pedo Empire was a Wikipedia and YouTube equivalent that he called PedoWiki and PedoTube. And yeah, that's pretty crazy. The PedoWiki had over 600 articles that spanned 1,200 pages and had over 1,000 contributors, which, geez, no words on that. Lux also had his VIP sites, his invite-only sites, where they had to prove themselves before they could gain access to the site. They had to prove they were active with a child, which usually they had to provide a picture of a child holding up a sign. Really disturbing stuff. Thankfully, the Pedo Empire did not last. Matthew Graham was arrested in 2014 and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Okay, we're moving on now. We're going to be talking about Hackers for Hire next. Hackers for hire. Okay, hackers provide their services for a price. Hiring a hacker from the dark web is pretty easy. It's as simple as buying drugs from the black market. It's a simple transaction. You choose the service that you want or need. You pay with Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency and wait for the result. I'm saying you, but obviously don't do this. Yeah. All services usually require an upfront payment before the job is completed, and then the time frame for these jobs can range anywhere from 24 hours to weeks, but hackers are usually pretty confident that they can get the job done within 24 hours, and obviously that depends on how advanced the task is, so yeah. Okay, hackers on the dark web usually offer a variety of services. They're all pretty harmful and obviously illegal, but some are more harmful than others, such as ruining someone's life by planting child pornography on their computer, which can really ruin someone's life. Personal attacks like that can have an average price of $551, and then you have the Bitcoin amount. which makes more sense since it's the dark web. Some other services include website hacking, DDoS attack, social media account hacking, which is the most common, custom malware, changing school grades. I might need that. Just kidding. Location tracking, computer and phone hacking, email hacking, and debt clearing and credit boosting. Okay, now we're going to talk about murder for hire on the dark web. The dark web is known for having murder for hire sites claiming to offer more sinister services like murder. Most of them are fake though, and are just scams to steal Bitcoin. I feel this is a common misconception with people that don't know a lot about the dark web. Like, they might hear about these murder for hire sites, and then they're like, oh, that's kind of scary. But most of them are like, they're fake and they're scams. Like, they're blatantly fake. They usually have very disorganized websites and it's just riddled with spelling mistakes and it's very blatantly fake. Black markets usually don't allow these supposed hitmen to advertise, so they're forced to create their own sites. So yeah, most of these murder for hires have their own sites, which I just described. Most of them are fake. They're blatantly fake because they look fake. These murder for hire sites usually offer a variety of services. They just don't offer just plain murder. They usually offer stuff like rape and beatings as well, and more specific kind of attacks and murders, such as they can make it look like an accidental death for 20,000 plus. They have acid attacks, facial disfigurement, arson on property, broken bones, vehicle arson, or just if someone wants to scare someone, you can also have that arranged. And when looking at this picture on the right, this is a picture of a real hitman site, and obviously it's fake, obviously. But the prices seem to vary depending on the site. Okay, now we're going to be talking about one of the biggest murder for hire sites, the Besa Mafia. It was started up in 2015 by someone known as Yura. It was one of the sites that was known for actually having a legitimate looking site, and one of the things that made it look legitimate was that they didn't try to force the stereotypical that they had hitman, they had genuine hitmen, professional killers, but instead they portrayed it as their hitmen were gangsters and other violent people wanting to kill / hurt people for money. It was more grounded that way. And unsurprisingly, this turned out to be a scam. Yura tried to rebrand Besa Mafia to start over, but of course it never lived up to Besa Mafia, since it was uncovered to be a scam. And then in 2022, quite recently, 5 of the founding members of Besa Mafia, including the leader, Yura, were arrested in Romania. So, now we are going to move on to present investigation. The study was conducted to find criminal activity that's occurred on the dark web, and the purpose was to see what common elements were found in these real-life cases that I decided to take a look at, and relayed it back to the initial research. 2 case studies were reviewed for each category of crime: illegal marketplaces, illegal media, hackers, and murder for hire. So for illegal marketplaces, I found the Kingdom Market and the Monopoly Market, which were 2 black markets found on the dark web, and we will go over them in a bit. And then for illegal media, I looked at the case of Monterey Soundgam and a live stream murder case, that was pretty much a red room case. And then for hackers, I decided to look at Darkcode and Breach Forums, which were 2 hacker sites on the dark web.
And then murder for hire, we looked at the case of Ronald Craig and the case of Melody Sasser. And those two tried to hire a hitman. And we'll look at those cases once we get to them. And the questions that guided the research included some of the questions I was thinking about when reading about the cases. What was the crime and how did it occur? Who was the offender or offenders, and what charges were they faced with, if any? And how long were they able to commit the crime until they were caught? And who was the victim or victims? Okay, so first we're going to look at Kingdom Market, which was an illegal marketplace found on the dark web. Kingdom Market started in March of 2021. It was known for selling drugs, malware, stolen identities, credit card information, counterfeit money, and fraudulent identity documents. Transactions were made using cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, and Zcash, and we talked about that earlier. Bitcoin is obviously the most popular, but these illegal marketplaces were not shy about using other cryptocurrencies. Vendors had to pay 500 euros as an entry fee, along with additional fees for each sale that they made. And then Alan Bell was accused of running the site, who was a 30-year-old Slovakian man. He was arrested on December 15th, 2023 in New Jersey, and he was charged with 10 felonies, including conspiracy to contribute controlled substances, 4 counts of distribution of a controlled substance, conspiracy to commit identity theft and fraud related to identification documents, identity theft, aggravated identity theft, misuse of a passport, and money laundering conspiracy. It's quite the rap sheet. And if you look to the right, the picture here is actually of a last announcement that was made on the site. It says, "Residents of the Kingdom, we proudly announce that the Kingdom has fallen. Thank you for your cooperation." So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Okay, now we're going to look at Monopoly Market, which was another illegal marketplace found on the dark web, and it was launched back in late 2019 by Milomir Desnica. It was known mainly for selling narcotics, including opioids, stimulants, psychedelics, and prescription medications. And an application had to be filled out in order to become a vendor, so kind of like Kingdom Market. Cryptocurrency was used for transactions, and the site was taken down in 2021, which was around the same time that Kingdom Market got started, so there's that. And many arrests were made in this case, around 300 people in total. 153 were arrested in the US, 55 in the United Kingdom, and 52 in Germany. And 33-year-old Milomir Desnica was arrested in 2022. He was charged with conspiracy to contribute and possess with intent to distribute 50 grams or more of methamphetamine and 1 count of conspiracy to launder monetary instruments. And if you look to the right, that was a screenshot of the site, and if you see why it's called Monopoly Market, they decided to use the Monopoly Man as kind of a mascot, if you will. So that's pretty interesting. Okay, we're going to be talking about illegal media now, with the case of Montre Salgam. He ran a subscription-based pedophile site that had around 63,000 users, and he would do this by luring children into one of the homes with the promise of food, internet access, and soccer games, and then they would be sexually used in front of a camera. And the children were masked to avoid identification. In total, 9 sex offenders were arrested in this case. The main administrator of the site, Montre, he was arrested in Thailand in 2018, while the other administrator was arrested in Australia. Salgam was responsible for abusing 11 boys, and one of those 11 boys was his own nephew. and he was sentenced to 146 years in prison on charges of child rape, human trafficking, possession, and distribution of child sexual abuse material, while the other administrator got 40 years and 3 months. In total, 50 children were rescued, but investigators were still trying to identify 100 more children in photos posted on the site. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the livestream murder case, which involved two teens who paid Bitcoin in order to watch a murder livestream on the dark web that involved children. The site the teens visited allowed patrons to pay extra to choose how the child would be tortured next. We talked about that with Red Rooms, remember? And the live streams on their site showed children being sexually abused, tortured, and murdered. The two teens, who are Italian, a boy and girl, were only 17 years old. They were found to have exchanged details about what they called a red room. There's that term again. 25 people were involved with the investigation, including 19 underage kids and 6 adults. And no specific details were found on if any children were rescued, or even if the site was real. Now we will be moving on to hackers, and we'll be talking about Darkcode, which was a notorious hacking forum that could be found on the dark web. It was described as the most prolific English-speaking cybercriminal forum to date. It included services like providing hacking tools, zero-day exploits, stolen data, spamming, and botnet services. It was also a known gathering place for other hacker groups, such as Blizzard Squad, who was responsible for launching sizable DDoS attacks on PlayStation and Xbox. The original Darkcode site that operated on the dark web launched in 2007, and then that site was taken down in 2015, and over 70 arrests were made, and the leader was a hacker who went by the name of Isurado, and while he was the main operator on the old site, located on a dark web, the newer Darkcode site that is found on the clear web has a new owner, which is a hacker known as Hitman. But Darkcode is different now. It's on the clear web instead of the dark web. But yeah. Okay, now we're going to be talking about another hacker forum that was on the dark web, known as Breach Forums. It had around 340,000 members. It was a place for hackers to buy, sell, and trade hacked or stolen data. Stolen personal and financial information was the most common form of data on the site, such as bank account information and social security numbers. Connor Brian Fitzpatrick, a 20-year-old man from New York, was the main operator, and he had operated the site since March of 2022, and then he was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit access device fraud, and he could be facing up to 5 years in prison. But no news on that yet. Okay, so update on this case. Something that I missed. So Connor Brian Fitzpatrick, he did not get any jail time. Instead, he got 20 years of supervised release. So, yeah. Okay, now we will be talking about murder for hire. With the case of Ronald Craig, and Ronald Craig was a 56-year-old doctor in Washington, and he hired a hitman to attack his wife and one of his colleagues. He paid $2,000 in Bitcoin to have his colleague assaulted and his hand broken, while he paid $60,000 in Bitcoin to have his wife kidnapped and injected with heroin. His main motive for going after his wife was that he didn't want to get divorced, and he wanted her to drop the divorce proceedings. So yeah, and then Craig was caught by the FBI, who intercepted his communications before any harm could befall the victims. During the trial, this was kind of interesting. He attempted to marry a key witness so he could control her testimony in court, and even offered to provide financial support for her child, but that plan didn't work out for him. Kind of crazy. Like, holy crap. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison and he was ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution and a $100,000 fine. Okay, another one for murder for hire. We have Melody Sasser, who was a 47-year-old Tennessee woman.
She hired a hitman from the dark web to kill the fiance of a man she met on an internet dating site, Match.com. Pretty much everyone has heard of Match.com. The site she visited was called Online Killers Market, and she paid close to $10,000 in Bitcoin. Some information about Online Killers Market. They offered other services as well, such as hacking, kidnapping, extortion, disfigurement by acid attack, and sexual violence. The site itself had over 12,000 members and a forum where users could ask questions. Sasser provided both the location of the target, which was Alabama, and photos of the target as well. She was charged with use of interstate commerce facilities in the commission of murder for hire, which can carry a penalty of 10 years in a federal prison. But she accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to get a reduced sentence. Okay, now we will be discussing what we just went through. Black markets in the dark web. They offer the sale of illegal goods such as drugs, guns, stolen information, hacking, pornographic content, counterfeit goods, and much more. And Kingdom Market and Monopoly Market both share that commonality. Pedophiles usually have to create their own space on the dark web, like I've said before, and that's exactly what Matri Soundgan did. Red rooms are essentially live streams of torture and murder with the price of admission, and the two teens had paid Bitcoin to gain admission to a live stream of a real murder. So that could be qualified as a red room. Hackers are all over the dark web, so it's obvious there will be dedicated hacking forum sites that provide tools to help, and the cases of dark code and breach forums highlight that perfectly. The cases of Ronald Craig and Melody Sasser both involved defenders attempting to hire a hitman to kill people off a murder for hire site. It is widely believed that a majority, if not all, hitman sites are fake, but that doesn't stop offenders like Craig and Sasser from trying. Okay, so for limitations, only 2 case studies were chosen per category. The case studies differed in size, as some were small news stories and some were bigger in scope. It can be difficult to make an accurate, generalized statement based on the number of case studies chosen and the size of them as well. For future research, more cases need to be studied and the scope of them need to be taken into account as well.
In conclusion, the dark web can be a dangerous place that would benefit from being under the watchful eye of law enforcement. Unlike black markets, illegal media, hackers for hire, and murder for hire will continue to be a problem on the dark web due to its private nature, but that does not stop law enforcement from investigating and ending big operations like the Silk Road, Pedo Empire, or Base Mafia. The dark web's ultimate privacy in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is a big factor in why criminals seem to be drawn to and thrive on the dark web. It's important to note that these kinds of operations are always being investigated and the dark web isn't just being completely ignored by law enforcement. The dark web is a big part of the negative side of technology that is a continuous threat to societal norms and individual safety.